impeachment. You're like, you stole it.
Right.
And they really did. They really did. I mean, they suppressed the October bombshell that would have very likely tipped the election in Trump's favor.
Yeah.
And tried to make it seem again that Russia was, stealing our elections, which is another major factor in the whole Russia-Ukraine conflict. That, first of all, what an insane provocation of Russia it was for the last 6 years to have not just people in the corporate press, but like the former head of the CIA, on TV every day saying Russia attacked our democracy. They interfered in our election and then also claiming that they were in a partnership with Donald Trump to steal it from Hillary Clinton. And I heard senators and congressmen and every media pundit, people from the FBI, the CIA, constantly saying on TV that this was an act of war by Russia. That they would say it's worse than Pearl Harbor, what they did. And so if you're, from the Russian perspective, you're sitting there and you see the most war-hungry country in the world, the country that in the last 20 years has fought 7 wars, led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, destroyed nations, and they're out there saying, you just committed an act of war against us. I mean, that's quite an aggressive posture, particularly when they all knew it was bullshit. They all knew from the very beginning. And so you had all of that, and then they tried to do it again in 2020, claimed this was a Russian operation to interfere in the election. And meanwhile, all of it was actually a U.S. intelligence agency's operation to interfere in the election, just from the other side.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy that this is not a mainstream narrative and that the news ignores this. They also ignore during the debates when Joe Biden was saying that, my son didn't make any money over there and I have nothing to do with my son's business. Like, it's all lies. It's all easily proven and there's nothing.
Yeah. And of course, if Trump, the moderator doesn't push back during that debate and say, excuse me, Mr. Biden, that's just not true.
Right.
Like, we know there's no pushback on that. They just let him get away with it. And he gets to stand up there and say, hey, look, all of these intelligence officials, they tell him they're backing up my story, that this laptop is Russian disinformation. And I don't know exactly what it is now, but I remember there were they had like opinion polls on this after the Mueller investigation. And it's still an enormously high percentage of Democratic voters believe that Trump and Russia were Trump and Putin were involved in a conspiracy to steal the election. They still believe it to this day because they heard Trump-Russia collusion every day nonstop. And that is a huge part of why they support this war in Ukraine, because they think we're fighting the country who overthrew our democracy and gave us Donald Trump for 4 years. It's all just complete bullshit, but they believe it.
It's crazy how prevalent it is because people are just headline readers.
Yeah.
And the mainstream news is completely captured.
Yeah, and to some degree, I'm sympathetic to people who get, propagandized by this stuff, because we do, in general in life, we outsource the overwhelming majority of knowledge to other people. Like when my hot water heater broke down and I just hire a guy to replace it. I don't know anything about hot water heaters, but I just trust, I don't know. I don't know. So I'll just, you do it and let me know. We do this all the time with everything.
Right.
And so most people have busy lives. They're working. They got kids to take care of. They got a family. If the guy in the suit on CNN says it, well, I'm kind of trusting him to be the expert here, and he knows. And the problem is that, the guy who fixed my water heater, I don't believe is a corrupt, lying piece of shit. But the people on CNN are. And that's the major problem here. It's like you can't trust them.
And the culture in that building, in that CNN building, is all in support of that narrative.
Yep.
And you can't really buck that. Especially if you're a career person, you want to stay on the air, you want to keep things going. Just look what they did to Tucker Carlson, who was the #1 guy on television. And whatever feathers he ruffled, whatever people he pissed off, I don't believe he's openly discussed it yet because he's probably got some sort of a lawsuit going on. They removed him because he was a problem. The way he was discussing things was a problem.
Well, it's very interesting that if you we've talked about this before when we played clips about CNN talking about you and stuff, and like, but if you listen to like CNN, the way they talk about you or the way they talk about Tucker Carlson, not that you guys are in different worlds, but the way they talk about you two guys is like you're these very controversial figures who say all of these things that are not approved of, and these like very polarizing figures. But then you're like, no, he's the number one guy in cable news, and you're the number one guy in podcasting. Like, you guys, how are you guys viewed as controversial? But like CNN is talking to an audience of like 200,000 people and letting you know, people are very skeptical of these guys. I'm like, no, they're not. These are the most popular figures, and it's because people can at least smell that you're not bullshitting them the way these guys are.
Right.
And that was always one of the things that I really appreciated about Tucker, was that he would break with the Republican Party and have a completely different view from them. He would break with everyone else on the network, which is like, that's so unheard of today.
Yeah.
In MSNBC, if you look down the whole lineup, at CNN, if you look down the whole lineup, you cannot point to one host who has a drastically different opinion on an issue that matters than the hour before them and the hour before them.
Right.
But if you look at like, the daytime at Fox News, where they were on the war in Ukraine versus where Tucker was, or where they were on lockdowns versus where Tucker was, is a night and day difference.
Yeah.
And so, of course, they removed the one interesting guy.
Well, he was kind of doing podcasting on TV. Yeah. He had gotten to the point where his show was so huge that he could kind of get away with it. And he incrementally kept ramping it up to, he's like, the CIA killed Kennedy.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus.
Yeah, he started really going for it.
He was going for it.
That was great. People need to hear that.
Well, the beautiful thing is now he's just going for it on Twitter. And, Elon's like, okay, go ahead.
And you can see it in him that even though he was going for it on Fox, you can see the freedom he has.
Oh, yeah.
Like on Twitter, where he's like, okay, I'm not pulling any punches now.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Well, it's important. It really is. And people need to wake the fuck up.
Well, look, even like with this Trump thing, man, it's like I was saying, how so many people still believe the Russia collusion story, which was all made up, man. And you can go follow this whole thing. It was all made up, and they knew it. They knew what they were doing. There's that clip, by the way, before any of this stuff. This is before Donald Trump